Hello YouTube, welcome back to the Jobless Bum YouTube channel. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Today we are going to be ranking the NFL logos in a tier list. That is the National Football League and American Football League in America. So if you're not familiar with the logos, hopefully I can help you a little bit on identifying them, and we're going to be ranking them on their aesthetic value. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it. Starting off our tier list, we do have the Tennessee Titans. And I gotta say, I really like the color scheme of the Titans. They got this dark blue, this lighter blue, and this red, and I think they look really good together. I think on their uniforms, they perhaps sometimes play up this dark blue too much, when I think this light blue and this red is a really unique combination of colors that isn't really seen a lot in like a lot of sports franchise color schemes. So with that being said, I really like this logo a lot. You got the aspect of it being like a shield for like a Titan warrior and the flames, you know, so I think that's all really good. We're going to start it out with a bang. We're going to put the Tennessee Titans in the S tier. Next up, we do have the Miami Dolphins, and the thing about the Dolphins logo is it's not that bad on its own, but compared to what it could have been and what it was, that's where I have the major issue, because the old Miami Dolphins logo was kind of goated. It had like the helmet on it. It looked kind of menacing, but at the same time it was a dolphin, so it was still cute, right? It had the football, so you knew that it was a football team. But this one, it's a generic dolphin logo. Like, this could be a logo for a mutual insurance company, and I wouldn't know the difference if I wasn't an NFL fan. So for that reason, I'm going to put the Dolphins logo. It's not that bad. I'm going to put it in the B tier. Yeah, I think B tier is perfect for the Dolphins logo because it's not that bad of a logo. I mean, there's certainly a lot worse logos in this tier list, but it could have been so much better. Next up, we do have the Jets, Jets, the New York Jets. And I like this little touch in the logo of the outside of it being shaped like a football, and then you got the football in the middle, and you know that it is the New York Jets because they said it. So that is something that's valuable, I think. The only issue that I really have with this is that you don't have like a embodiment of a jet. You don't have an actual jet in the logo. So that, I think you could have done a lot of good things with that. So I think this logo could have been better, but I like the typeface in terms of just purely like, you know, mostly just words logos. I think it's pretty good. So we'll put the Jets in the B tier. It's not a top tier logo, but I think it's pretty solid. Next up, we do have the Cincinnati Bengals. This is kind of a similar thing to I have with the Dolphins, where their old logo / alternate logo, because they still use it in some contexts, like they use it for their YouTube channel. They have an actual Bengal tiger head as their logo, and I think that's so much better. It's very menacing. I don't know why they don't use it, because it's a really good logo. But this B is just very uninspired. Like, I also think that the Bengals are the only team that has like just like letters as their logo that doesn't reference their own city. So they're kind of like not proud to be from Cincinnati, which I don't know why anybody would be proud to be from Cincinnati, but if I was from Cincinnati, I'd be pissed. It's better than like some of these logos because it does have like more than just like one color on it, right? It's got the incorporation of the tiger stripes, which I think are pretty good. It's a nice touch, but you can't really put lipstick on a pig. It's still an ugly logo, a bad idea, a bad concept. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in the C tier. Next up, we do have the Cleveland Browns, and this is just so bad. This is such a bad logo. Literally, I mean, I guess the only thing that you could say is you do know it's a football team because it's a football helmet. And I guess it is pretty traditional, you know, if you value that kind of thing. But it's just very boring. The helmet is just one color. You got the stripe in it. I guess it is kind of timeless, although not really, because that face mask has not been used in like 10 years. So even then it's outdated. But if you use the new helmets for the logo, that would look ugly as heck as well. So I think the Browns logo is going into the D tier. It's our first entrant in the D tier. Just very uninspired, very meh. And you know what? That fits for the Browns, because honestly, if they weren't so bad, I'd forget they exist. Next up, we do have the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this logo is all right. It does look pretty generic, I gotta say. Like, this looks like a logo that you would have in like the old like Maddens, where you would like create a team. And these would be like one of like the, you know, one of the 20 logos that they would have. You know, it's just a generic Jaguar. It does look pretty menacing. And the fact that the tongue is the team's colors, which is the teal, is a pretty nice touch, although it does kind of look like it's got like hypothermia. So I don't know how menacing that is, but overall, it's not that bad of a logo. I think it's better than their old logo. I'll put the Jaguars logo in the B tier. It's pretty solid, but it's not doing anything to go up into that S or the A. Next up, we do have the Detroit Lions. And I really like this logo. You know, you got the blue color, which is just a really nice color, and separates it from, you know, being like just a generic lion logo, right? With their name being the Lions, you could have come up with something that isn't very unique, isn't very distinctive, but I think that this logo looks really good. It's kind of abstract, right? So you can use it in a variety of contexts, but you can still tell it's a lion as well. It's in that, you know, that fighting position, so I think that's also pretty cool as well. If this logo wasn't like associated with like the worst periods of football that has ever been seen by man, I think it would be ranked a lot higher and would be more iconic. I think it's probably an S tier logo. I'm going to put the Lions in the S tier. That's the only time the Lions will ever be in the S tier of any ranking, by the way, but I think it's a pretty good logo. Next up, we do have the Minnesota Vikings. I have a soft spot for the Minnesota Vikings because I am a Chiefs fan, and one of my favorite players growing up was Jared Allen, and when he left the Chiefs and was traded to the Vikings, I became a little bit of a Vikings fan. I'd say the Vikings are probably my NFC team, but I think this logo is really good. You know, you have an actual Viking. He looks menacing, and, you know, you got this yellow, but you still got the purple as well. And you have the horn on the helmet, which is on the side of the Vikings helmet, which makes for one of the best helmets in the NFL, in my opinion. I think it's really good. But the logo itself, I don't think is an S tier. I think the helmet is an S tier, but I think the logo itself is going to be. Next up on our tier list, we do have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I think this is a really good logo as well. It's got a sword, you know, because they're pirates, right? So I think that's a pretty cool touch. I think, you know, you could have like done something like a little bit more generic by just putting in a generic flagpole. But like having it be a sword really adds a nice touch, I think. And then you got this nice skull and crossbones design on the flag. You got the football, and you got the tattered flag, which I think is also a nice touch. You know, it's been through some swashbuckling adventures. So I really like this flag. It's probably an S tier logo, but because I'm a Chiefs fan and the Buccaneers did beat us in the Super Bowl, I'm gonna put it in the A tier, but I think it's probably an S tier flag, but I am a little bit biased. Next up, we do have the San Francisco 49ers, and this is just a disappointing logo for me because it is a classic logo. The 49ers are one of the most successful teams in the NFL historically. They've had plenty of legends, Jerry Rice, Joe Montana, Steve Young, amongst many others. But the fact that it's just letters and a oval is kind of disappointing, to be honest. I think you really could have done something cool with, like, 49ers. 49ers being people who in 1849 ran to California to mine for gold. It was called the Gold Rush. So I think you could have done a lot more with this logo. I'm going to put it in the C tier because I don't think it's like one of the worst logos. I think it definitely could have been better. Next up, we do have the Atlanta Falcons. And I really like this logo a lot. It's, it's a nice bird logo. I think that's supposed to be either the legs or like another wing. But I think you can tell that it's a falcon. You got the wings and stuff. It looks a lot better on the helmet, I will say. But I think the main reason that I like this flag is I didn't realize this until I really looked at it like a couple of years ago, but it is an F. So I think that's a really nice touch. Some may say it's a bit indescribable. It's a bit too abstract, but I like it a lot. I'm going to put it in the A tier. I don't think it's an S tier flag, but I think it's really sleek. It's really cool. And it's a very good logo. So for those reasons, I'll put it in the A tier. Next up, we do have the Baltimore Ravens. And here's the thing, is I understand why they put this B in here, for the city of Baltimore, right? I think this logo would look a lot better if they didn't have this B just like straight front and center in the logo. I think it would have been a lot better if this whole section was just purple like the rest of it. And I think that might have been an A tier for me, but I think this B really ruins it because it is a very menacing logo. You got the very menacing raven. It looks very angry. I think also you could have done something with the Maryland flag, because that's a lot of Maryland teams like doing that, where they like incorporate elements from the Maryland state flag, which it is a very good flag. So I would have liked to see them maybe do something like that with this logo, because I believe they do. Maybe I think they incorporated it in like another one of their logos, but for their main logo they don't. I think the Ravens logo, it's probably a B tier, which is kind of fitting considering the B in the logo. So I think that's a very fitting rating. I think I would have put it in the A tier if it didn't have the B in there, but it's a B tier for me. Next up, we do have the Chicago Bears, and this is going to be another entrant in our D tier. And here's what I will say. Some people may come at me and be like, Jobless, like, this is a stellar logo. It's classic. That C design is classic. People will recognize this logo just for the fact that it is just the C. It's a very iconic logo. One of my big issues is that this C logo prevents them from using the actual bear that they have as a secondary logo, which is very good. I think it's like, if they had the bear as their logo, that would be an S tier. But this is just uninspired, bland, boring. It's not timeless, it's just old-timey. Because they've used this logo since I think they started, or at least a similar logo. But yeah, for those reasons, I think the Bears logo is a D tier. It could have been so much more. And really, it's a simple fix. They just got to switch the logo to what they already have. Next up, we do have the Dallas Cowboys. And this is an iconic logo. If there was an NFL team that people not from the U.S. would recognize, I would think it might be the Patriots. But I think it would be the Dallas Cowboys. I think they have been ranked as like the most valuable franchise in sports, most valuable team. And maybe they've been overtaken in recent years by some soccer teams. I think the Cowboys logo is very iconic. It's very simple, but it's also very unique. I don't think anybody would like say like, oh, like this is like this is a different team. This is the Cowboys. But how much of that is just because the Cowboys were good? I don't know. I think it's a solid logo. I think it's really good. It's simple, but in this case, I think it's just clean. You know, I don't think there's really much you could have done with it to be better. Maybe if you had like an actual cowboy, it would have been a better logo. But I don't know. You could mess it up a lot. But I respect them going for simple. They've had this logo since I think their start. I think it's a really good logo. I'm going to put it in the A tier. Next up, we do have the Houston Texans. And what I will say about this logo is I understand what they're going for, but it's just very generic. You know, the red, white, and blue. It does kind of look like the Texas flag. So I will give them props for that. But it also does strike a bearing resemblance to the Texas Longhorns, which is the probably the most popular college football team in Texas. And definitely, probably more popular than the Texans. At least definitely when the logo was created. But it's just very generic. But it's also not, like, terrible. So I'm going to put it in the B tier. I definitely don't think it's worthy of being in the C or the D tier. But, all right, next up we do have the Indianapolis Colts. And in case you don't know what this is, if you're not attuned to farm life, horses, this is actually a horseshoe. And I think that's a pretty nice touch, honestly, in terms of, you know, a colt being a young horse. They need horseshoes. And I think the Broncos may have already been in the league at that point. So to have like another horse logo may have been not stand out. It may have made them not distinguishable from the Broncos, but I think this is a very cool logo. And I think the Colts have some of the best uniforms in the NFL, just the blue and white. So I'm going to put the Colts in the S tier. I think this is a really subtle touch. It makes you think, right? So I appreciate that. So I like the Colts logo. I'm going to put it in the S tier. Next up on our tier list, we do have the Los Angeles Rams, the reigning Super Bowl champions. And I got to say, this is like a very bad logo. I'm going to put it in the C tier. Like, what even are they doing? It doesn't even look like a ram. Like, it looks... It looks like this is like a venture capital firm logo. This isn't a football team logo. Like, what is this? Like, you do have the horn somewhat, but it's just not good. I think this looks more like a moon than a ram horn. If you were going to tell me, what is this team's name? Ram would not be like one of the first 20 things that I would say. I do like the colors, though. It's just a bad logo, though. It's not as bad as these two, though, so I'm going to put it in the C tier. Next up, we do have the Los Angeles Chargers, and this logo is pretty good. I think you could do a lot of things with, like, the name the Chargers. I think originally their logo, the concept of the Charger was like a military unit, right? Like a horse, like a cavalry unit. So if you look at the original logos of like the Chargers and even like some of like the secondary logos that they have, I think they still have some where it's like a horse. I think rather slyly, they switched the concept of the Charger into like this lightning bolt, which I think is really cool. It's very unique. I don't think there's like any other team. Well, I guess the Thunder, if you count that, in the NBA. The Oklahoma City Thunder have kind of a similar concept. But in terms of NFL, they're very unique. I like the color scheme a lot. This powder blue and yellow is really cool. Honestly, it's very simple. I'm going to put it in the A tier. I'm tempted to put it in the S tier, but I might be biased based on the uniform because I really think the uniforms are the best in the NFL. But I think it's a really good logo. It's just a bit too simple for me to put in the S tier, but I really like this logo. Next up, we do have the Las Vegas Raiders. Gosh, that still sounds very weird for me to say. Here's the thing. I am a bit biased. They're like the main rivals of the Kansas City Chiefs, which is my favorite team. But I can't lie. It's a really good logo. You know, you got a menacing guy who is wearing an old-time football helmet. You got the swords. You got an eye patch, for gosh sake. I think that's really good. The black and white color scheme is really good, and the silver. Here's the thing. I've stated my bias on some of these rankings. I can't put it in S tier, but it's like about as close to S tier as you can be. It's basically an S tier, but it's going in the A tier. Next up, we do have the Washington football team, although they did switch over to the Washington Commanders. I don't think the logo is like at all different though. Yeah, it's literally the same logo, so I feel justified in just keeping this on here. It's literally just the W. They don't have the football team around it anymore. This is honestly a very bad logo. Washington football team going into the D tier. Honestly, their old logo would have been like also lower than the D tier. It would have been its own tier of bad just because it's extremely racist. But it's just very generic. The W doesn't look good. It's just not a good logo. And like they could have done so much with like the Commanders. They could have like a general, you know, leading his soldiers out into army or something. I don't know. They could have done something better than this though. This is very uninspired. Man, bland, disgusting. Next up, we do have my favorite team, the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm throwing bias all out the window here. It's gotta be an S tier for me. I don't know. I think the font of the K and the C is very unique, very recognizable. So even if like you were to remove the arrowhead, which I would understand, you know, because it is Native American iconography. So I would understand if you did remove that and like change it to something else. It's a good base for the logo because it's a triangle. And I don't think a lot of the other teams have like a triangle shape. Like I guess the Patriots as well also have this triangle. But I think the Chiefs logo is somewhat unique in that it's charging forward, right? So I like that aspect of the logo. I think the typeface is really good, in my opinion. So for those reasons, I think the Chiefs logo is the S tier. Next up, we do have the New Orleans Saints. And this is, I believe, like a French reference. It's like a French cross, I think. It's really good. It is really unique amongst all the logos. You're not going to mistake this for a different team. And, you know, you got some local influence from the city that they're in. Like, this could not be another city's logo. It is definitely New Orleans. So I really like it for that aspect. I think the logo is really good. I think the colors could be changed. I think you could, like, come up with, like, a better gold than this, like, bland gold that they have. I'm going to put it in the A tier. I think it's almost an S tier, but the color could be better. Next up, we do have the New York Giants. And again, this is another logo where there's so much potential. You could do so much with the Giants. Like, I don't even know what you would do, but I feel like there's a lot of potential. And they decided to take the easy way out and just, oh, we're just going to do the letters of our city. And why? I mean, granted, I think this font is very interesting. It's, you know, it's not a generic font, but at the same time, it is just letters. So I'm going to put the Giants in C tier. It's just a very meh look. But I realized you could have been a lot worse. For that reason, I'm going to put them in the C. Next up, we do have the Philadelphia Eagles. And this eagle is very menacing. This is an eagle that you do not want to mess up. You don't want to mess with this eagle. Very menacing, intimidating, which is all the things you want in a sports team's logo. So I'm a real big fan. I think it deserves to go in the S tier. You got this bold outline, which makes the features of the eagle more prominent as well. Very menacing. And I think it's a really good logo. So I'm going to put it in the S tier. This is a stellar logo. Next up, we do have the Pittsburgh Steelers, which their logo is, I believe, the Steelworker Union logo. And, you know, steel work was a big part of the culture of Pittsburgh, right? So in that sense, I enjoy the logo, and the colors, as we learned earlier from the Jeffrey, are all the materials that are needed to make steel. You got this gray outline on the outside representing the steel, I believe, probably. You got the Steelers name in there as well. The only thing that I will say is I don't know necessarily if this is like a good sports logo, only because I feel like it's not very intimidating. So that's one of the things that I would say. But then again, I did also rank the Colts in the S tier. You know what? We'll rank the Steelers in the S tier. I think it's an iconic logo too. Very recognizable. Next up, we do have the Denver Broncos logo. And I'm willing to admit I am a little biased. The Broncos are probably my second least favorite team. And maybe number one, honestly, for how much heartache the Broncos have caused me over the years. Like, the Raiders for a long time were just, like, very, like, laughable. But historically, I'd say the Raiders are probably a bigger rival of the Chiefs. But as of recently, the Broncos have been better than the Chiefs. A lot of years, at least until Andy Reid got to Kansas City, and then we've kind of dominated the whole division. I think this logo is very intimidating. It's a very good logo. You got the flowing mane. It really exemplifies what a Bronco is. Makes it look very intimidating. It looks very muscular. It's got a strong jawline. Pretty good. It's probably an S tier logo, but I can't rank it there. I'm putting it in the A tier. It's a very good logo, though. I think the whole AFC West has very good logos. Next up, we do have the Green Bay Packers. And this logo is pretty iconic, I will say. Lots of teams use a variation of this G logo. Like, I know the Georgia Bulldogs college football team uses a similar logo to this. Here's what I will say is, like, a lot of these logos, I think you could have made like a more menacing logo, at least for the ones that only have letters as their logo. For the Packers, I don't think you could have made a better logo for the Meat Packers, okay? I think if you tried to make a personification of a meat packer, you would not make a very intimidating logo. So, in that respect, you got to deal with what you're given, right, for the Packers. They started out as a company team for, I think it was the Green Bay Packing Company. So, I'll give them a little bit of slack in that they probably couldn't have come up with like a good logo that was a Packer. But at the same time, it is still just a letter, so it's not going to rank very highly for me. I'm going to put it in the C tier. It's a very iconic logo. It's not as bad as these logos. These logos are just awful. Next up, we do have the Carolina Panthers. And this is one of my favorite logos. Just because you have a panther, it's menacing. It is probably one of the most menacing logos, if not the most menacing logo in the NFL. So this Panthers logo is very menacing. I like the colors. I like the black and the light blue. I think those are very good colors. And if you look at it upside down, it is a combination of the North Carolina and South Carolina state outlines, if you look at it. And they're meant to be a team for both of the Carolinas, so I do appreciate that a lot. For that added wrinkle, I think it's a definite S tier, and might be one of the best logos in the NFL, so definite S tier for me. Next up, we do have the Arizona Cardinals. For some reason, the Cardinals are a pretty common name for sports teams. You know, you do have the St. Louis Cardinals as well. I don't think you can really make the Cardinals like a menacing logo. What I will say, though, is the Cardinals, alongside the Bears, I think are the only teams that have been in the NFL since its conception in 1920. Obviously, the Cardinals weren't in Arizona that whole time. Originally were in Chicago, and then they moved to St. Louis, and then they moved to Arizona. And I think they've had this logo for a long time. I think they've made some adjustments to it over the years. But I think it's a pretty solid logo. I don't think it's a top tier logo. It looks kind of menacing, but at the same time, I don't know how you could make like a Cardinal look menacing. I'm going to put it in the B tier. It's a very solid logo, but I don't really have too much to say that's exemplary about it. Next up, we do have the Buffalo Bills. And, you know, Buffalo Bills, they were named after the Wild West character, Buffalo Bill, I believe. But in that sense, using the buffalo as their logo, I think, is an interesting choice. Not only are you representing the team when you choose to make that your logo, but you're also representing the city of Buffalo as well. I think that's a really nice touch. I think this red stripe showing some movement, I think, is really good. You got the horn on there as well. It's in a moving position like it's about to strike. So it looks pretty menacing as well. And it's pretty simple. I think there's benefits for having like a detailed logo like, you know, the Eagles or the Panthers. But I think there's also value in having a simple logo like the Colts or the Lions or the Falcons. So I think in this sense, I think the Bills logo is a definite S tier for me. Next up, we do have the Seattle Seahawks. And this is an instance where they've modernized the logo and the color scheme a little. And I think that's made the logo a little bit worse. The Seahawks logo used to be not as menacing, but I think it honestly looked a little bit better than this logo. They also used to use a lighter blue than this navy. And the green used to not be like so bold. I think it used to be like a more light green. And they used to replace that with the silver. So I think the old logo was better than this logo. But I still think this logo is pretty solid compared to some of the other logos on the list. I think the old Seahawks logo would have been an S tier for me, but this logo I don't think is so, but it's still a really good logo. So I'm going to put it in the A tier. It's very solid. It looks menacing, so that's important. Yeah, I think it's a good logo. The last logo on our list is the New England Patriots. If you've been following the NFL for the last 20 years, it would be hard to not know this logo, the Patriots. It's very simple, I would say. You got the man, you got the little Patriot hat. I don't know how to describe that, but you know, if you look at pictures of the American Revolutionary period, you'll understand that, like, that's the kind of hat that the soldiers were wearing, kind of. And then you got this, like, these red and white stripes coming off of the back of it, representing the flag as well. So I think those are really good. I think it looks kind of menacing too, but it's also pretty simple. So I'm going to put it in the S tier. I do think that the old logo that they had, which was like a more traditional looking Patriot, and it was in like a football position, like it was like the center was about to hike the ball, I think that logo was pretty good too. But this is like a rare scenario where like the team had like a good old logo, but I also think they have a good new logo too. All right, there is our tier list. I'm going to give you one final look at our NFL logos tier list. Thank you so much for watching the NFL logos tier list. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to drop a like, as it does help me out a lot. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts on the tier list were and maybe what your favorite NFL logo was. I'd be curious to hear what y'all's opinion is. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and be sure to stay safe.